Welcome to the Gray Range Podcast. My name is David Rousseau. We're going to explore the poetry of how we live, how we learn, and how we find our way along this strange path we call life. If you're curious about people, their stories, and all things savage and wonderful, join me on the Gray Range.
Those would be, that's the ones you pared down. How many did you start with again to get down to that size?
With that one, I think we were, had to be over 300. Okay. And then pared it down to the 200 and some, and then whatever's in there now. I don't even remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. And then and the new one is coming out when? Do you have a rough?
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff coming.
Is that where?
And
is that
we'll
what
get
we're
into
start
that.
With? Okay.
We'll get into that. So,
right.
I guess first of all, welcome to another episode of the Gray Range Podcast after our little hiatus here, summertime,
kind of summer break.
Yeah, exactly. Things happen, everything gets busy, and it was good to take a creative break. So I'm David Rousseau, and I'm here with my co-host Lucas Orich, and we're gonna have some beers, shoot the shit, and
see where it goes.
Fuck, man, there's no shortage of shit going on in the world.
It's a crazy world, yeah. Really
yeah. So we'll do some updates and kind of get people an idea of what they can anticipate from us coming through the rest of the latter half of 2024. Yeah, man. Cool. Cheers.
Cheers, bro. Is that a new tattoo?
Yeah. So my wife and I just celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary.
Dang, yeah, right on.
And you can't wear a wedding ring doing any kind of manual work.
Yeah, I get it.
And they make these silicone rings. I see a lot of guys wearing those. Didn't really appeal to me. Rings in general don't appeal to me. My hands are kind of webbed. I don't find rings comfortable.
Yeah.
So I'll wear my wedding ring like on weekends and stuff like that when I'm just kind of around the house and I'm not doing anything physical. Where I'm not going to risk a degloving. Yeah. But yeah, I wanted to get a tattoo. So it's a Gothic stylized letter N. Cool. For my wife's first initial. Yeah, just to commemorate the 15th wedding anniversary. I figure at this point we're 15 years in. I'm pretty good to like throw it on there.
I can get her tattooed on me now.
I'm okay. Okay. She protested though. She was like, "Oh, what if something happens to me and you go to get remarried?" I'm like, well, fuck. Like
her name's gonna have to start with
I'm pretty sure like the tattoo on my hand is the least of my fucking problems at that point, right? I'm not gonna be too worried about anything else at that point, man.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I already said I'm only doing this once. I never thought that I'd get married. Never thought I'd, try to have a regular domestic life.
I think that's most of us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But here we are, 15 years later.
And we end up there. And then.
Yeah, and that's life. So you were asking the new collection.
Because we had finished talking. I know it's come up on the podcast a couple of times. I'm just curious as to where it's at. I know you were working hard to pare it down and get it down to however many pieces.
Yeah.
Whatever you landed on there, and then what's the kind of timeline looking like for that?
Yeah, so it's in final edits right now. Basically going through each piece, fixing punctuation, making sure the verbiage is right, all that kind of stuff. All those last little cross and T's, dot and I's sort of stuff. And then it's going to be 107 pieces.
Yep.
I think I'm probably a little over more than 3/4 done the final edit. And then comes formatting, basically getting the book to printable, because I do it through Amazon, right. Kindle, direct publishing, KDP, and basically you have to pre-format your document yourself, and it's a bit of a time-consuming task.
Sure.
But once all the final edits are done, then it's just a matter of formatting all the pieces, getting it into a single PDF document. And then I'm looking to have that probably about the end of August. And there's a few more things we're looking to go live with at the end of August. So I want some of it to be a surprise. I don't want to give away the farm, but I've been working with Jeremy
from Creative Vibe.
Who was on here a little while ago. He's developed a website for us, so mostly done that. We just kind of had our kind of last real meeting on where that's going to stand. We're going to have access to writing. I'll have a blog on there. We'll have a subscription newsletter on there. There'll be a web store. We'll have some merch coming out. Plus, you can buy the book and this book and the next book. And
do we have a title yet? Or is that secret?
Yeah, we do. But I'm going to keep that played out pretty close to the chest.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's a wild one, man. This one's. I was actually really nervous about titling this one and putting it out like that. So it's kind of I think we'll hold that one close to the chest until it drops.
Till launch day.
Yeah, and then I've mentioned it to a few people.
Yeah.
And I've gotten a few awesome reactions from it. So I mentioned it to the guy who did this tattoo. I told him about a new collection coming out. He's like, "Oh, what's it called?" I told him, and he's like, "Oh, well, that's something." He said. So, yeah, it's good. I like it. I like the pieces that are in it. The concept is decent. I think other people will like it as well. So
very cool.
I do have a piece picked out. Something that I like from Children of the New Unknown, and we'll go in with that. This piece is called Old Lizard Man. Under still morning starlight, heart bright, the soul of the desert exudes heat, still lingering from the day in the ice blue night, stretching out like an old lizard, soaking up that ground heat and keeping an eye out for hawks. Here among the rocks, out on the long, low plateau, in a world made only of earth and sky and too many middle of nowheres. They say you either come here to hide or you come here to die. Old brambly sticker bush, brush on by and scrape my skin, bleed me out and still be home for unnaturally large jackrabbits. Guess they live here, so there's still hope for an old man on his last few feet of rope. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Stretch out like old Mr. Lizard on these warm rocks and watch the stars die. I never knew the grace of the desolate mind. Roll on, just like the desert. All night living. We've got all day to die.
Dang, that's kind of timely with the recent heat wave, because that's what I was doing in Lethbridge. I was just stretched out like an old man lizard.
Yeah.
It was hot, man. Too hot to do much.
Yeah, I personally like the heat.
Yeah.
I think that's because I come from a cold climate.
Yeah.
And I know we had this recent summer heat wave, and a lot of people were complaining about the heat. And I was kind of telling my wife, we're sitting on the deck one night afternoon, and it was hot, 35 degrees or whatever. And I said a lot of how you feel about the heat is psychological, because take this 35 degree temperature and put yourself on a beach, on a cabana chair, with a cold drink in your hand and the ocean beside you, and all of a sudden you're on vacation and you're paid a lot of money to have that heat.
Sure did.
Right? But because you're in your element here and it's unnatural to you to feel, or not normal, even though it gets hot here every fucking summer, people just have a different psychological reaction to it, I think.
I find it funny when people bitch about the heat. I'm like, don't worry, like minus 35 is coming, like the direct opposite correlation. Yeah. Like you're going to get a 70-degree swing.
Yeah, winter comes every year in this country, man.
You'll bitch about that too.
Yeah, every year. And I think that's part of the reason I like it so much, is because I'm acclimatized to the cold. Yeah. Give me a week in the minus 20, minus 25, and then I'm fine. And I like to work in the cold. Like working in the cold is a whole lot better than working in the heat.
Yeah.
But I find the heat's a novelty to me. I think it'd be different if you're living in a place that was hot all the time. I know when I was down in Houston last summer and it was like 110 degrees or whatever, and all that humidity, and that's something else, but still a novelty to me. I'm like, wow, it's fucking hot here.
We get 2 weeks of that heat and then we're done. Right?
Yeah,
that's typically for us, so it's not the end of the fucking world. But.
Yeah, and we get that swing all the time.
Yeah,
I mean, I missed out on part of that heat wave. I was out east, took my father's remains out to the East Coast.
Yeah.
To the Gaspe, a little town called Barchois, Quebec, where he was born. My family still has the house my grandfather built.
Oh, wow.
Is out there. So we're 100 years old. We kind of laid his remains to rest there in the rose garden.
Yeah.
Kind of apt that there was this huge wild rose garden at the house. And I'm like, this is Alberta's flower. It's the provincial flower of Alberta is the wild rose. So we put part of his ashes in that rose garden where my uncle stands there as well. Yep. And then we put the other half in the bay, the Mal Bay in Barchois, Quebec, where kind of he played as a kid. My grandfather and great grandfather fished and all that kind of stuff. So he's back where he started.
Nice. Is the bulk of your family then? Is that where they're from? Is that kind of, and are they still out there?
On my dad's side of the family.
Your dad's side?
Yeah. So his family, they were all born in Barchois. Most of them moved to Montreal in, I guess you'd say probably the 70s, maybe 80s. Maybe before that. I think it was probably before that. And when I first met them, they all lived in Montreal. But I think I've only got one aunt and uncle that still live in Montreal. I think most of them live in Toronto and Ottawa now. A good chunk of them work for the federal government.
Yep.
We're into third generation now of kind of my immediate lineage. So it was interesting. Got to meet some new people I hadn't met. Half sister I'd never met before.
Okay.
Half brother that I've just recently met. Aunts and uncles I hadn't seen since I was like 10, 11 years old. But the weather was hot there, but I know here it was considerably warmer for that duration.
Yeah, for sure.
Got to spend over 40 some hours in travel, so 22 hours there, 23 hours back. 2 nights in the lovely Pierre Elliott Trudeau Airport, which I have to say lives up to its namesake as the worst airport in Canada. There is not a worse airport in this country internationally, in my mind. And I think I've been through all of them in the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And, on the way back, it kind of dawned on me. I'm like, I'm I think a silver member or whatever with WestJet. I'm like, I could probably crash out in the WestJet lounge. Didn't occur to me on the way back. So I'm hiking all over looking for the WestJet Lounge, and I can't find it. So I hop on the internet. Where is the WestJet Lounge located in Pierre Elliott Trudeau International Airport in Montreal? It's in the international terminal that I need a passport and an international ticket to get to.
Yes.
Fuck you guys. I'm just like, fucking WestJet can't do shit right for me these days, man.
Yeah, I don't think they're not what they once were, that's for sure.
I don't know, man. Air travel has become a chore.
Yeah.
It used to be a novelty. It used to be something you did not really look forward to, but it had its perks. Like there was enough perks that kind of made it not so stressful and not so onerous. But I think it's just, especially in Canada,
it's pretty bad. Like we do some travel for work. I mean, we go down to Fort Worth every year, and we fly out to Quebec City. And it all takes forever long. There's no direct flights anymore. I think through, can we say the C words? COVID?
Oh yeah, for sure.
We won't get banned. But through COVID, I think a lot of the flights that got stripped out through COVID, they just haven't been added back in, and the industry hasn't really come back. And you can see it in the share prices of the airlines too. Like they're just floundering. They suck. They're struggling, and it hasn't come back like everybody predicted. So
yeah. Well, something occurred to me. Traveling last year did a good bit of travel, not so much this year, a little less for work. But, a lot of people talk about like the crowning achievements of human civilization. Socialized medicine, one of these things where like kind of lowering the mortality rate and raising the life expectancy and livable years of people and stuff like that.
Yep.
So, that kind of medicine, like the access to pharmaceuticals and medicine is huge. But air travel, like the fact that human beings have figured out this way of keeping all these planes in the air, like thousands and thousands of flights a day, flying internationally in and out of all these airports, and major screw-ups, major fuck-ups are pretty fucking rare. But like I said, post-COVID, and with all these issues, you're watching that system deteriorate a little bit. And I'm like, man, that system can only deteriorate so far. Because it's a fine-tuned machine, like the way it works.
To deteriorate.
The whole thing, the way like everybody from the ground crew to the pilot, like everything has to be working in a perfect system and perfect synergy. And maybe one day we can have Steve-O back on here to talk about this, because the concept of it, like as I'm sitting there in the airport watching planes take off and land, and this one's going to, Iran, and this one's going here, and this one's going there, like it's a huge planet-wide matrix of communication and technological innovation, and
I would be interested to know if it's only on the decline and it sucks in the West and it's getting better in other countries. Does it just suck here?
From what I understand, is it seems to be on the decline worldwide.
Yeah.
I think there's some places that I've read that are just worse off. Like I remember flying in 2011. We flew on Air Spain from Madrid to Barcelona, and that was 2011. And I got on a plane that still had ashtrays.
Wild.
Like, and then that's like, I guess, like the national airline, man. Like that's not a little podunk puddle jumper, up here or something like that. Like the smaller airlines that I flew in Quebec, so Pascan and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. Little regional airlines, fantastic service. Same type of like Dash 8 planes that are flying in and out of here, but really well kept, really clean, really professional service. So I think it's a matter of scale, where it's just really difficult for them to keep up. I wonder if it's on the
decline partly. They don't have a lot of money coming in, and I wonder if that's through COVID, where people stayed at home, they worked from home, and they got used to just doing everything via online.
Sure.
They didn't have to fly as much. Like the world became a more digitally connected place. Like the whole physical presence thing wasn't as important. And I wonder if there's still a big hangover from that, where it just hasn't rebuilt, and it might not. Like it might not build to that point. Just,
yeah. Well, and I think like I said, the scale. So we definitely saw a lack of labor. So a lot of these organizations had things like diversity, equity, and inclusion to increase the access to their labor force.
Yep.
Right. And when I look at it in that way, I agree with it, because I'm like, I want the best people on my team, and I don't really care where they come from or what kind of clothes they wear or who they worship or anything like that. If they're the best person for the job, I want them there. But it didn't get applied that way. It didn't get applied like a meritocracy,
sure
right?
No.
It got applied in a much different way, as we need to fill gaps in our labor to keep these systems running.
Yeah.
And we just start stuffing bodies. And in the oil field, we've seen what that's like. We've seen what an Alberta boom does, where we pull in anybody with a heartbeat, a warm body, and stick them behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler full of fucking condi and send them down the road. I mean, how many bridges in BC got burned up in the last couple of years, or like horrible crashes? He wiped out a whole fucking hockey team.
Yeah.
Because we're just trying to get stuff down the road cheaper. That's right. We're just trying to put warm bodies in seats, and we've seen where this goes, right? So we really don't want to be doing that in air travel, right? Like you wipe out 800 people in a 747 or whatever the fuck one of those things holds, and it's a
major.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. And all of a sudden, like you have one high-profile major airline plane crash, and all of a sudden people are going to drive, man. People aren't going to, like, a lot less people are going to fly.
Yeah, they just, like when, was it Boeing, that MAX 8? They started having problems with the MAX 8. Like, it was a big deal, man. And everyone's like, I'm not fucking flying on one of those.
Yeah, well, there's a big conspiracy theory around that too about
Sure.
lowering carbon emissions and stuff like that, and basically restricting air travel. So restricting people based on like carbon, right? So you're only allotted so much carbon output per human being.
Yeah.
And the average Joe, you and I, get so many carbon credits, and you can fly to Albuquerque, but you can't fly to Hawaii. But you can't fly to Japan. But if you own your own fucking private jet, you can fly where the fuck you want, right? So,
or if you work for the government.
Yeah, the one of the big conspiracy theories is restricted movement, right? Restricting how people get around the planet.
Yeah.
And this is a planned obsolescence, a planned.
It starts with the nucleus of your 15-minute city and builds out.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a fantastic way out there conspiracy theory that can never possibly be true, and then I think about all the way out there conspiracy theories that can never possibly be true that are now true.
Yeah, the difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth is 6 months.
Yeah, I think now it's almost more like 6 minutes, man.
6 minutes, yeah.
It's pretty wild. So got back from that trip, and my hometown burned down.
Yeah, Jasper's on fire.
That's a third of the town burned.
It's gone, yeah.
So cheers to hometown, Jasper, Alberta.
Yeah, and here's to all those people that hopefully they can come through it all right.
Yeah, that was more emotional than I thought it was going to be honest with you.
Yeah, it seems like a real clusterfuck, and it's one of those things. It's like I think it's easy to throw spears at the feds, so I will.
Fucking A.
There's numerous studies over the years showing where they had to take all the dead trees out, and they should probably log parts of Jasper, whether you fucking want to or not. So the pine forest matures every 90 years.
Yeah, because that's what your dad said when he was here. It was like a max 120 years.
Yeah, well, it's beyond that. Like most of this stuff down there is probably 30 to 50 years overdue to burn. It's gonna fucking burn whether you like it or not.
Yeah, there's
nothing you can do about it, except you could log it. You could cut all that beetle kill out of there, and there was numerous. There's all kinds of articles coming out where Parks Canada was told as much. Like, hey, we got to log this. We got to take this out, and why they did or didn't. I mean, whatever. I'll leave that to the experts to debate. But Banff will burn. Whitecourt will burn. Hinton will burn. All of these communities are built right in the woods,
right in the forest.
They're all fucking due to burn. So, is it a big conspiracy theory where they're burning it out to do a real estate deal with the feds? Like, there's all kinds of shit coming out, and you're like, well, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
it's not beyond plausible.
No,
but certainly the science behind managing the landscape. That's an old science. This isn't new. And the very fact that they didn't is fucking negligence. And the problem is that Alberta's on the hook for all of this. Those people are insured by the province, not by the feds. All that Ottawa does with federal parks is use it to say, look at us, we're Canada. And it's a fucking cash cow for them.
It's Alberta tourism that runs it more so than Parks Canada in a lot of cases.
Well, sure, but there's a big kickback to both, right?
Yeah.
Like they only care about running it as a commercially viable enterprise, which they're fucking 100%. Horrible at, because the government always fails at running anything as a successful venture. So 100%. Here they milked as much tax dollars out of it as they could, exploited it to the max, and now it's fucking gone and it's burnt. Yep. Way to go. Who fucking won there? Like,
yeah, I mean, when I finally managed to get a map to see what burned, there was a few pictures that came out that kind of struck me because there was, I saw homes burning that I was like, oh, that was my friend's house growing up, right? Yeah. I spent a lot of time playing in their backyard or getting babysat by their mom, or because it's a small community, 4,000 people, and I grew up there for 12 or 13 years in the 80s. And my parents were kind of live-in landlords looking after two large apartment blocks.
Yep.
And they survived, but probably 200 feet from there, across a parking lot, basically the next apartment complex, that's gone.
Yeah.
Most of my friends that live there or lived there Most of them don't live in the park anymore. Those that are in the area live outside the park, live in Hinton or Canmore or wherever else. They don't live in the park, but their parents still had homes there, or their siblings that worked for Parks Canada did.
Yeah.
They're all gone. Most people did live on that southwest portion of town. And yeah, that's all gone. And then portions of downtown. I was reading a story that they actually drove bulldozers right through the middle of downtown to create a fire break to stop the buildings from burning. So half of downtown is effectively gone. So be interesting to see what they do and what kind of developments.
And you look at the people, you look at the ministers responsible. You look at Stephen Guilbeault, showing.
I'd rather not, to be honest with you.
Like, you got all these frauds and these fucking criminals.
Yeah.
Which Harjit Sajjan, let's be clear, he's a fucking criminal. So Stephen Guilbeault.
Oh yeah.
So is Justin Trudeau. So these are the people that are like flying out, and it's like nothing you can say or do will make any of this better. In fact, a fucking guy died, an Alberta firefighter, 24-year-old guy died.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think that happened yesterday. So
because that fire was still out of control last I heard.
Yeah. So so now we have a guy that died because of gross negligence.
100%. I don't go back very often.
A lot of this is not. It comes up in the gun industry, accidental discharges. It's all negligence. Very few accidents happen.
100%. Yeah.
It wasn't an accident. It's through pure negligence that now this guy's gone.
Yeah, he wouldn't have had to be there had things been managed in the first
pure
place.
Negligence that it burned up in the first place.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, what a lot of people from the outside don't understand, like, is when you're living in those wilderness areas, fire is part of your reality. I think in my time there, I only recall one like evacuation level fire where we were like prepped to evacuate, and that was the Old Man Mountain fire.
Yeah.
Human caused. Hikers up on the mountain had left a fire going and didn't put it out sufficiently, and that got Old Man Mountain's miles from town. It was potential summertime, that kind of thing, and you could watch it. You could see the fire up the mountain heading towards the town site. But I don't go back there very often. I moved out of there in 96, and I've been back 5 times. Yeah. Once for my honeymoon, once for work, and then a handful of trips since then. But the last time I was there, my wife and I did a little tour around, and I was really struck. This would have been about 5 years ago. And I was really struck with all the pine beetle kill because the sides of the mountain were gray. All the forest was gray. It was all dead. Yeah. And I was just, all of it. And I was just like, man, this is a tinderbox. Like I told my wife, and I had a conversation with her just like 2 days ago about this. She's like, I remember you saying that like eventually there's going to be a fire and it's going to tear through here because there's nothing to stop it.
So look, like even in my short lifespan here, as a young man in my, actually my teenage years into my early 20s and then through till my 30s, whatever, I was in the fire game. And through that whole time, I mean, we had, in no particular order, I mean, there was Mitsu, there was Chisholm, there was Slave Lake, Fort McMurray. We almost lost the Crow's Nest Pass. We had Edson last year with the big evacuation. Like none of this.
Twice, they got evacuated twice.
Twice, right. Yeah. And that's just a handful off the top of my head. None of this is fucking new. So the very fact that it's still happening and it's going to keep happening, it's like, okay, for the amount of money. So you can look at it a couple ways. You can say, well, transfer payments, why would we even do that when we could invest all that money that we prop up the rest of the country on welfare? Yeah. Unpopular view, I know, but it's true. Why wouldn't we put that money towards, thinning out the force and force management, looking after it, the amount of, how much money have we sent to the Ukraine? Whether you agree with the conflict or not, there's all this money that we send overseas or we send it to the rest of the country where we could be looking after our own assets.
We don't even need to. We could be making money off it. There's private companies that would go ham on those forests, man.
Well, for sure. I'm just saying
we could be selling that timber. That beetle kill was going for more than regular timber. What was that? When did I build my? So when I bought my old house, I rebuilt the fence and the deck because they were all rotten and falling down. Yeah. My mom's husband at the time worked for a private sawmill out by Wembley, and they were sawing beetlewood because they were able to get in on private contracts and harvest out all this beetlewood. And he got me, I can't remember, 2 or 3 lifts of unfinished fence board. Yeah. For a fraction what I would have paid at a lumber yard. And he's like, this is the last that I can sell you. Like, you kind of got in right under the wire. He's like, after this, everything else is like going to Japan.
Sure.
And the demand all of a sudden, because it had this beautiful blue grain.
Yeah, it looks
that
wild.
worked inside that.
Yeah.
So there's a house in the south side of Grand Prairie that's got all like this really, really neat beetlewood fence board on it. That's, now would cost a fortune to have.
Yeah.
And we could be making money off that. We could still be making money off that.
Sure.
But instead of turning a problem into a profit, we're just letting it compound into a bigger problem.
Yeah.
But that sounds like government, right? Like,
it sure does. You can tell the feds are managing that aspect of the.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people are
Parks Canada, but then of course the province too. Like Danielle Smith is culpable. And every government before her. Like, why aren't they doing something right now to look after the future? But they're highly reactionary. I mean, they put all this money. Again, this is just my opinion, but they put all this money into having, crews and equipment and stuff on contract and on standby, like to the tune of probably hundreds of millions of dollars to be ready for fire suppression every year. Great. That's fucking wonderful. That's like having ambulances and fire trucks. We need that shit.
Sure.
But how much are they putting into pre-suppression activities as far as like active logging and et cetera? Like, I don't know what the numbers are, but obviously it's woefully small in these places where it matters.
Well, I mean, Canada's how much boreal forest, right?
It's a lot.
And, I think like anything, when we let governments that are reelected every 4 years try to solve problems that are generational, they don't get dealt with because it can easily be passed off to the next administration and the next administration. And when the bad thing happens, it's not your fault. You've only been there for 1 to 4 years, right? It's the guy before you or the guy before that should have dealt with it.
Right. But there's more to it than that because you have your ADM and your DM, you have your deputy ministers, you have your assistant deputy ministers. Those are the people that are supposed to provide that longevity and oversight in all these departments.
Sure.
So they know that they're going to have a new ruler every 4 years or whatever it is, maybe for 8 years, but typically they get shuffled around and shit. But there's supposed to be some continuity in the departments anyways.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't.
Well, that
whole rabbit hole of like.
This is where we get to the deep state.
Some lazy fucker, he's just there to get his 20 or 30 years in and collect his fucking golden pension.
Right.
I don't know, man. Like those guys aren't doing us a favor either.
Oh, 100%. So. I mean, when those people are in positions, like you say, for a lifetime, when these are lifetime appointments, some of these things, this is where we get that problem that we talk about when we talk about the deep state. We get these unelected officials.
That's right.
Who are not just influencing policy, but they're the ones, the gatekeepers to the shovel in the ground, so to speak. And when they're working for a union that's comprised of activists, then you don't have a system built to do the best thing for the people or the best thing for the environment.
Yep.
They're doing the best thing for their ideology. And we're going to have more problems like this. And we see this in situations with, like we were talking with Mel in our last podcast with homelessness and drug addiction, where instead of, hey, let's get these people back into the workforce, let's get them the mental health help they need, let's get them the medical help they need, let's get them off the street and let's return them back to this viable life. Instead of that, we're just going to give them free drugs, right? Yeah. Because we have diverging ideologies on how we're going to solve this problem. And it doesn't matter what the government says, because the people entrenched in those ministries or those departments, those are the ideologues. Those are the people following the lockstep of their peers or their peer group or their union or their whatever, their community that's built inside of this system that doesn't allow for that kind of change, right?
I agree. I don't want to go down the. It's too much to talk about. Fucking get rid of the unions, man. Fucking just get rid of all that. Get rid of anything that makes anybody a bulletproof employee, where they can just do whatever 100%. They want and just hang out forever and get paid and not be accountable.
Yeah, it needs to be.
You still have a union, but you have to strip the protections that are there to just protect the worker. Like,
it has to be a meritocracy.
It's 2024.
Yeah,
like we live in a world with human rights and equal rights and diversity, inclusion, and equity.
HR departments,
and all that. Yeah. Surely to God, we could craft or draft some legislation that protects everybody equally and get rid of all these self-interest groups.
Yeah. Well, I understand, one of the conversations I had with some of my family out east, because it's interesting, the regional ideologies and philosophies of life and how things should work. And there definitely is a disparate viewpoint out east when it regards to the government, regards to the federal government, regards to unions, in regards to, that's the way things were for a long, long time. And, like talking with an uncle of mine, and he's like, well, because of the unions, you have A, B, C, and D for workers' rights and workers' protections.
Hey man, yeah, no,
100%.
There was a good reason to have unions.
Yeah, because you had to fight these big bosses, these big corporations. Essentially, these guys were robber barons, right? A little bit that got changed because on the private side, back in the day, poor people didn't have access to the judiciary. Yeah. Right? You couldn't sue your boss, right? Because no lawyer would take the case, and no magistrate would rule in your favor, right? Because you didn't get paid your overtime or had to work when your kid was sick or whatever the fuck, right? Yeah. Now that's a little different. I do see the point of the union in working with the government a little bit, because if you're an employee of the government, who are you going to go to if the government fucks you over? The government?
It gets pretty complicated.
So I kind of get that, but like you say, it's a little bit outdated and it's a little bit archaic. Yeah. But I think it's different in the West than in the East. I think just our philosophical viewpoints and how we view work are two totally different things. For sure. And in a way, I think it's cool because I think we need those opposing viewpoints. We need somebody over here saying this to somebody over here saying that, so that we don't get in these echo chambers. And the worst thing you can do is think you're fucking right all the time. You want to know what the path to hell is? It's thinking, fuck, I can do no wrong. Yeah. Right? Nobody's there saying, hey, don't go that way, dude.
Yeah. Have you worked with unionized people much in your...
No, I worked for unionized people. I did government contract work and stuff like that.
Just one thing I've noticed through, like, I've worked quite a few jobs where there was unions or unionized people, and one thing, in some places it's pretty good, but in a lot of places, man, you just have a bunch of bitter, angry people who are hanging on for their pension, and you're like, 35 years and I get my pension, and you're like, all right, if you are savvy, like, for the amount that you have to contribute for them to give you your pension, whatever, like, it's, there was a thing the other day that I think it was some big pension board, it was teachers one or whatever. And they're like, yeah, we did 8% last year. Holy fuck. Wow.
Yeah.
Like, anybody can do 12 to 15 without being too smart. So you could actually, you could take the same amount, you're hanging on to that, your whole pension. I mean, if you're a disciplined investor, I'm not saying I am, but you could do 12 to 15%. You don't have to hold out for the pension board to do 8% and get all the matching. Like, yeah, there is benefits to it, but very often people that are like a long ways in, they don't seem too happy, man.
Well, no, I think when we look at...
They reach a certain point where there's no turning back because, you've already got 10 years in or 15 years. It's that lost time fallacy, right? Yeah, and you're like, well, holy fuck, like I've already made it halfway. I guess, 15 more years. But these people aren't happy or productive necessarily. Now, I'm not saying that's the rule. There's always exceptions to it, but that's just been my experience, that people who are unionized, that are just hanging on for the pension because that kind of comes with the program, they don't seem too happy.
Well, yeah, I think, like I said, the systems that we have, they're not built to be meritocracies anymore. Like, they're not attracting the best and the brightest, and the people who figure out how to make it on their own, they leave. Yeah. Right. One of the things you're saying about millennials now, and I would imagine this probably scales to your Gen Z or whatever, is that they're not looking to take a job to stay in that job for life.
Correct.
Like, they're looking to take a job to gain enough skills to remarket themselves to another job and then move up both in salary and position much quicker. And personally, I think this is because of video games.
I was about to ask you, do you think that the TikTok generation will ever hold a job for more than, say, 6 months?
Well, I think the way that they view it, because I think the way that their brains work, a lot of these young people is they're gaming it. Yeah. They see the system as it is, and that's how they've been raised playing video games. And what do you do when you're playing a video game? You kind of go around and explore a little bit, but then you figure out how the system works. And then you figure out how to game that system to gain the most experience and get the most powerful assets and all that as quickly as possible and level up as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that. And we've built these systems that are gameable, and young people are doing that. And I can't fault them for it, because the system wasn't built to help you. The system wasn't built to, as much as we say, well, like I said before, we've got socialized medicine, we've got welfare, we've got, this, that, and the other thing, where we say all these systems were built out of some kind of benevolence. They weren't. Yeah. None of it. They're control systems. None of it is built to help you. They're built to help the control system. And that's it. So, obviously private business is built to help whoever owns the private business. And it's in their best interest, since they have 100 employees, they want 100 healthy, happy, productive employees that show up to work every day and work hard and do more and be innovative, be entrepreneurial. That's what they want, because that's in their best interest. So if they want to look after those assets, because you're a human asset. You're a number. You're just like a pump or a truck or a fucking flange or a valve or whatever. Yeah. You're an asset. And it's in their best interest to look after you. But don't get it twisted. The system isn't there to help you. I think the kids nowadays are disconnected from that, which is fine, except when we see something like public service, because that's what it used to be, is public service.
Well, sure, and I think there will be a crunch somewhere down the road where our idea of how people progress through their careers and what your end of life looks like, as far as like, okay, I retired, now what? It's like, will the system change to accommodate career hopping? Do you know what I mean? Like, as right now, you got somebody who puts in their 30 years at wherever, they get their pension and they're good to go. But, if somebody's changing their career every 2, 3, 4, 5 years max or whatever, if they keep changing, what does that guy's life look like at the, he's due to retire and now he's switched careers to, maybe just to get ahead, or maybe because he was fucking bored and just needed to change, whichever, both valid.
Yeah.
But like, what does that look like for that guy? He won't be rewarded in the current system, just the way it's set up. He won't be rewarded.
Not in the traditional sense. What I'm seeing now, which is kind of interesting, given the day is August 5th, 2024, and the stock market just plunged $1 trillion fucking dollars.
Sure did.
Japan Nikkei index fell its highest or its most since Black Tuesday back in the 80s.
Don't look at your portfolio today, bro. Just stay logged out for a month.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it'll look better.
Exactly, but what I am seeing, at least through social media, is what young people are learning is to diversify. So if you're a young person and you're trying to scale your professional life, so you're climbing, changing jobs for better salary, better benefits, maybe better location, maybe trying to get some skills so you can level up to the next thing that you want to do, and you have some kind of end game, and maybe you don't, maybe you're just wetting your beak here and there. It's possible now. You can buy your own stock. You can have a private pension. You can be contributing to that. You can be diversified into crypto, into precious metals, and you could spend your life, like you said, doing it on your own. And there's a good possibility that you're probably in as good or maybe even a better position than somebody who's in one of these huge corporate pension plans that something like today happens, and all of a sudden you were sitting on $1.5 million waiting for your pension to come through, and you lose 30% in a day.
Yeah. Like, I would agree, and I think there's two kind of key things that would affect that. Is number one, we have so much access to information now, so you can actually be successful. Excuse me. Just by watching YouTube.
Yeah.
And I mean that facetiously. I mean, not just YouTube, but there's so much good education out there. Like, oh, I want to learn about something. Well, now you can. You can learn about anything you want because you have a supercomputer in your pocket. And then the other side of it, too, is that for anybody who's any amount of hustler, like who's like not afraid to learn and go figure things out the hard way, you'll probably be successful, because if you're not afraid to what do you say, like crypto, your own stock portfolio, precious metals, whatever, all the other asset classes, real estate, which most of us, you buy a house, you're in real estate, whether you like it or not, you're in the market.
Yep.
So all those things, if you're not afraid to learn about them and tackle them, you'll probably be more successful. Now, if that's not you, if you don't like any of that stuff, you don't want to learn about that, that's not interesting to you, you just want to learn whatever, your interests don't lie in your, what your life after work might look like.
Yeah.
Like when you're finished your career, if you're not interested in any of that, then yeah, it's probably safer to get a job where they look after all that stuff. And,
100%. And that's what I think. That's what I mean. It takes everybody.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be successful. If I want to have a successful business, I need that go-getter. I need that guy who's going to help me build the business, that guy or girl or whoever, come in, who's going to show up early every day, stay late every day, take on extra projects, see inefficiencies in our program that they can do better, right? Do that on their own without any coaching, right? Then there's going to be great coaches, people who come in and they're like, man, that guy's really good and he's good at training other people.
Yeah.
But ultimately, someone's got to clean the fucking bathroom.
Yeah.
Right? And you need somebody to do that too. Someone's got to sweep the floor. And you're going to have to do that too. And that guy or that girl or whoever that cleans the fucking toilet every Wednesday and Friday or whatever is just as important to your organization as the top salesperson hauling down, $100 million in sales a year, because one doesn't exist without the other. Nothing happens in a vacuum. I think good leaders realize that there is no worthless person, right? Everybody plays a role. So if somebody wants to come in and they want to clock in and work their 9 to 5, and all they care about is their paychecks in every first and 15th, their pensions looked after, their benefits are looked after. They're going to have a little nest egg to save, maybe some money for their kids' college fund, some dental coverage if their kid needs braces, whatever. And they're going to show up for 35 years doing the same job.
Those people are like they're the anchor in your organization. It's kind of like I
100%, man.
Jiu-jitsu coaches talking about like who fills up the gym, and like your most important block of people are like your evening class adults that, you got your doctor, you got your plumber, you got your dad, you got these people that just show up because they want to be better. The gym can't just cater to the tournament guys and the medalists, right? Or the gym won't make it. What you need is a solid block of people who are just doing what they do, and they're there because they enjoy it. They want to have fun. And it's kind of like, it's a little bit different than the whole work thing, but
no, it's a business like anything else.
You need that core block of people that just do the thing, and then you have your outliers, and then it's,
yeah. And I think that's where we're at in our society is trying to figure shit out about like what's the value of somebody's contribution, and how do we move forward with the way things are. Like, and part of it is we got to separate out this information. So to jump to something topical, look at this, what's going on in the Olympics right now.
Ooh.
Right? So obviously there's this huge controversy where you've got
dudes beating women.
You've got men or individuals, let's say, with XY chromosomes competing in women's events. I was doing a little bit of research and a bit of reading on this, and typically what happens is they're not allowed to compete. So this actually happens quite a bit. I think it's like 22 times, like since the 80s, that a female competitor was tested, and a lot of them didn't know. They had no idea that they were a female and actually had internal testes and actually had an XY chromosome. They were born a woman, lived their whole life as a woman. Yeah. And obviously they're a little bigger, a little faster, a little stronger, but they had no idea. Nobody does a chromosome test. Yeah. They'd get this chromosome test at the Olympics and find out. And I was reading that there was a runner or something like that was not allowed to compete, and then after appealing several Olympics was allowed to compete. So this is something this isn't new. This isn't a new problem that popped up with identity politics. It was something that popped up in our modern day, and was used as a giant fucking splitting maul to divide people even further.
Yeah,
right now.
That's what they like to do.
Oh, 100%. So value judgments aside, because obviously if someone's got a genetic advantage over somebody else, well, we need to talk about that in a competitive level.
Yeah.
Because I think the current IOC made some decisions based on, again, diversity, equity, and inclusion, not out of a meritorious idea, but out of trying to be inclusive. Well, the Olympics aren't inclusive. They're the most exclusive thing out there. We're literally trying to find the best individual at that event. And when you've got human beings who are spending their entire life dedicated to throwing a metal ball or swimming a length of water or fucking jumping over a big fucking pole, then
it's exclusive, but it's been divided by gender for as far back
it's about finding the best man and the best woman.
Yeah.
And we made rules about no chemical enhancements, no medical enhancements, right? So do we look at it as somebody's got a genetic advantage, so it's okay, or not? And that's not my decision to make.
I think
right.
I can only, like, the boxer there had been previously disqualified from other world level events by the IBA and other,
but had already competed in the Olympics as a woman and lost to women.
Yeah.
Like,
I still think it's just it's a sideline fucking spectacle that it's like, I don't know, like
it becomes one of those things where because gender identity is a hot topic right now.
It's the topic.
Well, one of, right? Like, but it becomes one of those things where if we can use it to split people down around ideological lines,
which I think is the unfortunate part, because that's unfortunately where the discussion always leads, is they want everybody fighting.
Yeah.
Can't seem to find any common ground where everyone's like, hey, right on. Everyone's like, what the fuck? Everyone's angry about it. So you're like,
well, that's what's going on in Britain right now.
Cool.
Right? So in what's going on?
Are we going to talk about mass immigration? Is that where this is headed?
Well, I mean, I think that's a bigger problem, and you could get some deep conspiracy theories about why this is happening. Aside from there are huge chunks of the planet that really suck to live in because they're overpopulated and full of poverty and this, that, and the other thing. But you think all this is just happening by accident? I don't fucking think so.
No.
But it's what seems to be happening currently in the UK is you've got large indigenous populations, because that's what Englishmen are. They're indigenous to England, who are upset about the immigration laws and what's happening in their country. And by all means, right?
Well, I think when you have 3 little girls get hacked and killed and you have massive rape gangs and all this other stuff that's not normal to the indigenous culture there.
Sure.
It's probably a shocker.
Yeah. Well, what happened when the white people started popping up in the fucking Comanche fucking hunting lands?
Yeah.
Do you think the Comanche were just like, come on down? No.
Let's hang out. Yeah.
I mean, they lost eventually, but like, I think it's natural when you're seeing these sort of things in humanity, we can't look at them as being different things because they're not different things.
I always wonder why government thinks they can do a better job each time of managing it, though. So, and I look at their policy like this. Same for Canada. Same for the U.S. Anywhere where there's like open borders right now, all of Europe. When I was a kid, about 10 years old, I grabbed a shovel and a 5-gallon pail. And I knew there was a spot where there was black ants and red ants, 2 separate hills, right? So I took a shovel of black ants and a shovel of red ants, chucked them in a bucket. As a 10-year-old, like, you're watching your policy unfold.
Sure.
And they all killed each other.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like government uses that same 10-year-old level of thinking. It was like, I wonder what happens if. I mean,
I don't think they're wondering, though. If you look at what has the UK government done in the last 48 hours?
Crack down on indigenous people.
Well, no, they're going to implement facial recognition software.
Sure.
Chinese-style travel policy. Yeah. So if you're caught at one of these riots by facial recognition software, your summons is in the mail. right? You'll get an email saying show up at whatever because now you're going to jail because you were at the place at the time. They're going to ping your phone.
Yeah.
Like, in my mind, these things are allowed to happen because the control system always wants more control. But from what I understand, what's happening is social media is riling up the indigenous population of Englishmen saying, everybody meet over here and let's burn this immigrant center.
Yeah.
Right. And then social media is going out to a bunch of not even immigrants, but say Middle Easterners that live in Britain, in that community, saying there's racists on the way to burn your business.
Yeah. And getting them riled up.
Yeah.
And actually,
and this could be happening this could be happening outside of the country. Like, this could be all manipulation by a third party.
Tim Kennedy talked about that with Joe Rogan, about like all these conflicts where you got two different factions begin warring.
Mm-hmm.
There's always out-of-state actors. Not always, but very often. It could be Chinese, could be Russians, could be anybody who's interested in destabilizing your country. Might even come from within.
Yeah.
So
100%. I have a hard time believing these things are happening in a vacuum and they're happening organically. There's just too much at stake, because quite honestly, like, if my business, if I'm a Middle Eastern guy and I've got a shawarma stand and you're an English dude and you've got an English pub and they're right fucking next to each other, the last thing I want is someone to come burn down your pub, because the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to come burn down my shawarma stand, and then we're both fucked.
Yeah.
Right? So usually what's happening is these things are people who don't have skin in the game. So be it unhoused immigrants, be people who are being brought in, bussed in
the
some
government
cases.
is directly responsible, because it's
Yes.
possible that this would have all worked out, but it's always too much too fast with government.
Yep.
It's always like, let's import as many people as possible because we got to boost our numbers.
I don't think they have control over it.
No, and that's their fault.
100%. I don't think.
Well, you can't say that Canada has no control over its immigration policy.
I think we do and we don't. I think we have control over. Like, I think our systems are an illusion of control.
Sure.
The U.S. had pretty decent control of its southern border for a long time, but there was still people getting in. Right? That's always going to be a
but
thing.
not by the thousands.
No, not like we're seeing now.
All I'm saying is that the numbers,
Yeah.
like, all of this could be managed like through a vetting process and everything else. But when it becomes essentially open borders,
100%.
You don't know what you're getting, and what do you do with all these people?
Well,
How do you keep them happy?
Yeah.
Like, it's the same way that gangs form. Like, how does a gang form? Well, you take a bunch of disenfranchised youth who have nothing else to do, nothing to live for.
Mm-hmm.
You give them a little bit of organization, which doesn't take much, and now you have this cohesive unit. And that's what's happening, but not by the government. That's not who's organizing these people. So you have this, what could have been a controlled expansion of your population and growth with people that would, kind of fit in with your society to, well, fuck it, just let anybody in. And that seems to be what's happened in a lot of these places where it's grown too much too fast. Where there's no checks and balances in the system anymore.
I don't think that what we're seeing worldwide right now is an accident.
No, it's a controlled demolition.
Yeah.
It's Building 7.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I'm in a situation where I'm Russia, China, and I've got a, I don't want to call it an axis, but I have allied fronts on ideological battle lines with the West, and my goal is to destabilize them as much as possible. I think that's pretty obvious. That's what's happening, because it's not happening anywhere else, right? Like,
No,
China's got one of the biggest growing middle class in the world, and nobody from like fucking Syria is trying to get into China.
Well, because they control their border and control their population.
Right, but I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's flowing one way for a reason.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
This isn't an organic, everybody out of these countries because they're failing. And the other thing that kind of gets me is we're going to spend, nations like Canada, the U.S., Great Britain, France, whatever, are spending all this money to deal with this influx of migrants. but I don't see anybody really looking at the source and being like, well, why are they leaving? Right? What's happening to their country? Is it infested with giant man-eating ants?
No.
Like, is this a problem that we can't fix?
So in some ways it's government policy. So if you look at the explosion of temporary foreign workers and temporary student visas in a country like Canada. So anybody can come on a temporary foreign worker program. I'm sure that the guidelines are loose. When I say anybody, I mean, I'm sure there's some basic precursors.
Yeah, for sure.
But then they come, right? So you have a whole bunch of people, they come to the country looking for work. Because the government's like, well, we have a $350,000 jobs we need to fill in the country, whatever that number is.
Yep.
So they bring in 350,000 foreign workers on temporary visas or whatever it is. It's like, well, who did you get? What are they doing here? And do they leave when it's time to go home? Maybe, maybe not. And it's kind of, and then they announce new policies. Well, this will open up the path to citizenship because they rely on the numbers for growth. However those numbers look, right? Like whether it's, our GDP or our new home starts and all this stuff, whatever metric each ministry wants to measure it by, they're only looking at the positive side of that number. They're not looking at the negative side of it. They're not looking at, okay, well, hey, we filled those 350,000 jobs. Our employment's at an all-time low. But they're not looking at it as like, well, there's no fucking homes. The food banks are overrun. And all the other problems that go. There's no doctors. Who's going to look after all these people? Like, they don't look at that side of it.
Yeah, well, there's an ideological metric for sure that
they gloss
there's
over
a lens that they're looking at it through that, they're going to see what they need to see to justify their position.
100%.
Right. And I think there's, I think what's going on in this uncontrolled migration that's happening worldwide, that's different than immigration. I think we use a term like immigration because we don't really have another word that works other than invasion that really describes what's happening and that's what I mean. Like, no one's looking at the source of these countries. And like, if we're looking at some of these African nations, some of them have growing middle class, right? Some of them are having more access to technology, more educated young people because of access to the internet. But we're not looking at saying like, hey, like, if the situation's so bad there that all their military-aged males are trying to get into this and that country, why aren't we making it better in their country? Like, our country's good. The thing is, I don't think that you say, well, I see why they're leaving because their country's a shithole, and that's all it's ever going to be. I don't think that's the case. I think that there's economic reasons why maybe they want all the military-aged males out of some of those countries. Maybe they had a whole bunch of fucking lithium. I don't know. But I think that there's bigger things going on internationally at play that lead to these sort of things. And if it happens to destabilize Western powers, bonus, right? I think we're in a weird position, but I think that's, to go back to what we were talking about before. I think we need everybody. I think we need the good people. Nothing warms my heart more than seeing a big, jacked up 2025 Chevy truck roll up into a parking lot and this Filipino dude get out. If he's got a pair of cowboy boots on, I'm like, fucking A, man.
Yeah.
This guy moved here and bought in 100%. He's got like an Oilers jersey on. He comes out with a case of fucking Canadian. I'm like, man,
I still
live the dream.
I still think that probably the bulk of our system is designed to get good people.
Well, I think the whole world is full of immigrants, and that's how we're not meant to stay in one place. We're gonna disperse out into wherever. But I think what we're looking at is, these breakdowns of what society is in some places. And I don't think we're going to get something that's homogenous. I don't want something that's homogenous. Like, I love going to Japan because it's full of Japanese people and Japanese culture and thousands of years of it.
Yeah.
I love to travel and go to other places in the world because they're distinctly different than mine, right? They have their own cultures, their own customs, their own food, their own language, their own history, their own music. They have that, and they should have that, and that should be celebrated, protected, and nurtured forever. And yeah, there's places where cultures have been wiped out because of careless immigration. And we're doing our best to try and fix some of those problems and say, hey, look, your culture was valid, and yeah, we fucked stuff up, but let's nurture what we have of it, because I think we need everybody and we need all that diversity, but we need it in that way, what I mean, where it's meritocracy. We need it because it's good.
Yeah.
Right. Not because it's going to help me leverage my next re-election position.
Well, and I think that's the unfortunate part, is that whatever the program is, if it's run by the federal government, it will be fucked up.
Trudeau still ain't got clean water at all those reserves, man. How long's he been in power? Like 1,000 years now, and he still hasn't done the thing he was going to do on day one?
Yep.
Like, the most low-hanging fruit that he could have done in Canada to actually help, Aboriginal communities was to actually help Aboriginal communities.
Yep.
Still hasn't done it.
It doesn't really cost that much to build a pipeline.
No. What's he going to run on next year if he fixes that problem?
Yeah.
Right? You only take away so many guns, right?
Yeah.
He's almost got them all.
Just about.
Let's switch gears, man.
Yeah, we better switch gears, yeah.
Speaking of guns, how's the training going, man? How many classes you guys done this year?
Jeez. Like probably 8 or 9.
Okay. How's the turnout?
Good. Like, our classes, they've all been pretty well full.
And the last one you guys did was the shotgun one, right?
Yeah, we did pump shotgun 1. That was a good time. That was
right on.
That was my baby.
Yeah.
I like pump shotguns. They're a lot of fun. And I haven't taught pump shotgun in probably, 8 or 9 years. It's been a minute. So
I think it was you that first, maybe it was Jaeger who described it to you as like a thinking man's platform. Why is that?
Man, because there's a ton of work involved. Like, you're always feeding it.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like, when you load up your rifle, it's just hit the button, fresh box of bullets, and go back to work. Like, the shotgun, you're always stuffing it. It's got limited and diverse capabilities. Like, it does a lot of different things.
Sure.
Whether you're shooting buckshot or shooting target load or shooting slugs, like, it shoots, you can shoot all these different things out of it.
Yep.
But it requires you to be cognizant of how you're going to run it, how you're going to load it. How will you take a shot at a far target? Do you transition to a slug? Do you do a changeover? Do you do a double changeover? And under what circumstance? And what kind of ammo will you carry with this thing? Like, what are you using it for? Are you in the bush because there's bears? Is it parked beside your bedside table, or whatever the case may be? Like, there's all these different applications for it.
Yeah.
It's extremely complicated. Like, in one day, you're basically just running through how to run it.
Sure.
Right? There's no time in one day to get into like anything like tactics or this or that. It's skills intensive. There's a lot to it. So
yeah,
but it's fun. It's a good time.
I agree. I've taken, I think I took Earl Phase Line Korean. I took his shotgun course.
Yep.
And it's a lot of work, man. It's not a,
and there's a
push
lot of
button gun.
No, there's a lot of myth busting that kind of goes into a course like that, where people have this idea that you can just point and press the trigger and whatever you're aiming at will vaporize, and then but
that's because of Doom.
Sure.
Right? When you got the shotgun in Doom back in the day, man, you were just fucking evaporating demons, right?
100%. So.
And according to Joe Biden and other politicians, man, you just racked that fucker, and fucking
people will
oh yeah, home intruders just fucking shit their pants and run away, right?
Yeah. But we end up doping the shotguns. Like, when you dope out a rifle, data of prior engagements. Yeah. And so you go and you take all of your, for lack of a better term, measurements at 100, 200, 300, and you kind of build this shot card.
Yeah, which is called patterning with a shotgun.
Yeah.
Right?
So in shotgun, you kind of patterning and you're doping it out, and you're like, the reality is that about 25 meters, most buckshot starts to really fall apart, and people are like, oh, like, people have no idea how, like, where these things limit out.
Sure.
You switch to a slug and you got some guys hitting a plate at 100 meters, and they're like, oh, So there's a lot it can do, and there's a lot it can't do.
So what are you running for a course like that? For a shotgun?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
A Remington 870 Marine Magnum. I've had that thing for about 20 years. It's
nice.
Buttery smooth, and I like
it. And
how
long's the barrel on that thing?
18.5 inches.
Okay, so what are you getting for say a 1 ounce rifled slug? What do you get for distance out of that? Like, what kind of engagement distance do you really have? Or take, like, say you wanted to use it for hunting, or you wanted to use it for bear defense. Like,
yeah.
What kind of distance are you looking at?
I think with practice, anybody can make a 50-meter shot. With a little more practice, you can get out to 100 meters. But there's a lot.
Okay.
I say with practice. I think with today's guns, like if you just want to put a red dot on it and dial it in for a slug, you can probably shoot 150 meters and still make a good hit.
Sure.
Typically what happens though is shotguns are smooth bore, and then slugs are cut with a twist. And it's a rifled slug, so it'll have like a right-hand twist in it. And depending on your shotgun, like, you know, for you to make a hit at 50 meters, like you might have to hold the lower left edge of the target for it to spiral out. Because remember, it's coming out of a smooth bore and it's doing this thing. See, it's easy in principle to say, well, I just switch to a slug and make a shot at 50 meters. But unless you're holding in the right spot, like there's a lot to it.
Yeah,
Every
for sure.
time you put in a different ammo, it changes the way that, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think most people don't understand that. I think the first time Ira went out to do some real shotgun shooting was with you. And I think I had, you know, some sort of 870 and that was the question. You said, well, have you patterned it? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
What do you even mean? Yeah.
No idea what you're talking about. I just, you know, I just put shells in it and things go, and it goes bang and things go away. Yeah. Like that's how that works. Like that's how you shoot clays, right? Yeah. You just aim in the general vicinity of the clay. And it's not saying there's no skill involved in clay pigeon shooting, because there is.
Yeah, it's just a slightly different. Yeah.
Yeah, which is soon to become, you know, drone defense.
Right.
Which is fantastic. I love seeing those old skills have new applications.
That's right.
But yeah, that's really cool, man. I'm glad to see you guys are still doing courses like shotgun.
Yeah, it was a good time, and I think there was just enough interest where people were like, oh, you're going to teach a shotgun class, and as soon as I announced it, I was like, well, can I run a semi? I'm like that's a whole different class, right? It's a different.
Yeah.
They're different enough that there's. Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, for sure. So. And I think it's still one of the platforms that's relatively cheap to shoot. Like you can shoot all day.
Oh yeah.
On a course like that, not break the bank like you would with even 9 mils. Not cheap anymore, right?
For sure. I mean, you can still buy, you know, on sale pricing on a flat of shotgun shells. You can still buy 250 rounds for $130.
Yeah.
You know, when you find them on sale.
Yeah.
Which I won't shout out WW.
Oh, by all means, man.
Yeah, you can pick them up at the shop right now on sale for that price. So
the link is in the description.
Yeah. So compared to some of the other costs of ammo, it's pretty cheap, fun day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're shooting steel all day long, right? Because we're patterning with buckshot, just so you understand it. Then the buckshot gets put away because that's more your people will buy buckshot for reasons of wanting to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest, you know, we pattern out slugs, and then basically the rest of the day we're shooting target load on steel and working through a bunch of different stuff. So it's a good time. I mean,
what are your typical kind of engagement distances for your evolutions? They're kind of within 30 meters, 20 meters.
Yeah, for sure on a shotgun day. And then of course you have your minimum distance. I mean, we're typically 10 to 15 meters at the closest out to say, 25, 30. And then some longer shots for slugs where we'll start pushing out to, some 35 to 50 meter shots just to switch it up. And
nice.
Yeah. So it's a good day, man. And
students are having fun on that.
Yeah. I still got to put together the video. I'm the guy that does all the horrible video clips for the back alley range. So it takes me a long time to I got all these 1 minute clips and you're trying to take the best 5 or 10 seconds of each one and put it together. But, we shot some old school drills. We did Rolling Thunder, some of the old classics. It's cool.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Any courses left for 2024?
Yeah, so this weekend coming up here, so August 10th and 11th, we have non-restricted carbine 1 and non-restricted carbine 2.
Okay.
And then the week after, I think it's August 21st, Earl's coming up.
Yeah.
Phase line green, so we're doing vehicle CQB, and then the next day we're doing low light pistol.
Okay.
I guess the day before both of those, we're doing a level 1 holster class for anybody that wants to do low light pistol. That way they're kind of squared away ahead of time.
Right.
And I think that's the next 5 things, and I think that's it. We don't really have anything added after that. We might try and add something in later September, see how the weather holds. We're supposed to be doing King of 2 Mile.
Okay.
Down with Rob Furlong.
Right.
So that's
and who's gonna be shooting that? You and
September.
Mike?
Yeah,
Davison?
me, Mike, Chris, maybe Travis. I don't know, or if I don't know who else is coming. 3 of us for sure will go down.
And where's
I
that
say for sure. So Youngstown, Rob's home range.
Okay.
So yeah,
Nice.
2 miles is a long way.
Yeah, and you're gonna be shooting
300 Norma.
nice.
KX Kraken. Yeah, big stupid stuff.
Yeah. Any training going into that?
Yeah, the training. For me, I'm always training if I'm behind a gun. So I'm always, trying to apply all the fundamentals and principles we're supposed to as good riflemen. It's a lot of homework, man. It's a lot of science.
Yeah. Do you have a specific load that you're gonna go out there with for?
Yeah, I'm still working on it,
shot?
which is like, holy fuck, I better get on it because it's gonna happen right away.
Yeah.
I don't think. I think the reality is with I think we probably run out of gas around 2,800.
Okay.
So that's still pretty far, though. I don't think there was any hits at 2 miles last year.
Okay.
I can't say that for sure. I'm not positive, but yeah, once you kind of hit that 28, you're kind of out of gas, and it's a lot of the guns that maybe would have been used a few years ago have been prohibited now. So something that would get you to that 2 miles with a little more oomph and authority.
Yeah.
We just can't have them anymore because they're too dangerous because target shooters have them.
Yeah. Right. So your 50 cals and your
416s,
416 Barretts, was it 375 Shaytac?
Shaytac, yeah. I mean, you can have 375 Enabler. Like, there's some of this other stuff, but it's kind of cost prohibitive because it's very specialized.
Right.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Cool, man. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
And what about 2025? Are you guys already putting together a course schedule, or are you not getting there yet?
No, it's not even on the. I got some ideas about some classes I want to run. I'd like to do a how would I describe it? Like a Canadian rifleman class, sort of like a hybrid, almost like an intermediate distance rifle class.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
With some more kind of teamwork and then pushing targets. Like, we're talking 50 to 250 all day long.
Right.
With a lot more movement.
Yeah.
I don't want to give too much away, so I'll just.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Kind of that. It's a Canadian.
That's
class.
the fun stuff.
We're in the field and we're moving and.
Yeah, it's not so much on the line stuff. You get to move around a little bit.
High speed shooting and looting.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of what I want to do. It'll take me a while to figure it all out, and then we have to have a market for it too. We'll see how. Again, I think we do because we have a pretty good turnover rate in our students. Like we have a lot of repeat customers, so which is good because then you can take those guys that are alumni and be like, hey man, like you have no worries about them coming to this class. So,
cool, man. Oh, right on. Well, I think we covered a lot of fucking ground.
We did, man.
For one thing, good to catch up with you. Good to let the people know that we're still around.
We're still around.
We're still doing podcasts, and we've got some really cool stuff coming. So some really cool guests in the pipeline for the latter half of 2024. Maybe a few familiar faces might pop back in, and some other really cool stuff that we're probably going to have going live here in the next few weeks if everything kind of works out.
So at some point we'll be able to say, like, make sure you like, comment, subscribe down below on the YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, X. What else are we on? Facebook. I guess we're on Facebook now.
Apple Podcasts,
Spotify, and then soon to be website.
Yeah, it's coming.
It's coming. So we're getting closer.
Yeah.
Merch. Stay tuned for merch.
Yeah. There's some neat stuff. Well, I don't want to give too much away because a lot of people have put in a lot of work.
Yeah.
Getting this to where I want to be, and I'm a dumbass perfectionist. And you can ask any of the artists that have had the joy of working with me over the past 2 months that
Oh, it's frustrating as fuck.
Yeah, and I'm really fucking picky. So it's I'm sure I'm a joy to work with. I hate working with artists. I'm an artist myself, so I know how it is.
I
wouldn't want to work.
Too.
I wouldn't want to work with me. Right on, brother.
Right on.
Good to see you again.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.